Agora sim, agora sim. Mas, pessoal, vamos ver mais um Show Talks do Hasting da Netflix.
Reed, welcome back to Stanford.
Excited.
We are so excited to have you here at the GSB. Actually, I heard a rumor that when you were here pursuing your master's in computer science, you also tried to enroll at the GSB. What
Lowly
happened?
engineer, Yeah, I was got a degree in computer science, and I was fascinated by what you guys have here. And at the time, you had an ability to cross-list occasionally, but I did not make the cut. And so I've always had this aspirational relationship where I want to come back, and now I kind of belong halfway. So.
Well, Reed, it turns out the joke's on us because people at the GSB really just want to be in a Netflix show.
Ah, that's true. No one could tell them that I was going to be a media executive.
Exactly.
That was easy to see.
Yeah, but I mean it. I mean, so much so, we actually put together our very own version of one of Netflix's biggest hits. Can we show you the preview?
Let's hear it.
All right, let's do it.
There's a pitch.
At a school where the only achievement greater than becoming a founder is joining a VC that funds founders. A secret society of free market fanatics.
A green triangle?
Has devised the ultimate competition that will push them to their limits.
Get downstairs.
8 MBAs are chosen to face off against each other in a series of challenges.
Student 2. Is the market big enough?
I didn't do the reading.
But only one can walk away with the grand prize, a big tech offer in a cold job market. From trauma dumping
I still don't have a job.
to calendar blocking.
5 minutes. Enough to establish an authentic relationship via coffee chat.
Only one can reach the view from the top.
Que tosco, cara. Que tosco.
Welcome to the Stanford game.
Which of you will change lives, change organizations, and change the world?
Okay, bravo, GSB. You took the indictment of inequality and you turned it into your own anthem. I think that is brilliant.
Oh my gosh. Well, Reed, thank you for indulging us. That was a lot of fun to watch and to watch you watch. But in all seriousness, Reed, it has been so incredibly inspiring to see what you've built with Netflix, and I know that's only part of your story. So let's start a little bit earlier. When did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Probably junior high school, selling cinnamon sticks. We take toothpicks and soak them in cinnamon oil and sell them for a nickel a piece. So it was those kinds of experiences that made me want to create things. And only later did I realize you have to sell them. But that was early on.
Okay. Was that a unique experience, or did that kind of happen throughout your early life?
No, I would say I was always doing little projects, most of which ended up being non-commercial. But as an example, when I was here at Stanford, so this is mid-'80s, and back then you had a keyboard and a computer and a mouse, and you'd have to take your hand off this to use the terminal, and it slows you down a lot doing this. And I realized, oh my God, there's a big market in a foot mouse. And you could kind of do this and control it. And I almost dropped out of school to pursue the foot mouse. And I got a mechanical engineering student here to help design it and everything. And I was totally committed. This thing was going to be a monster. But it turns out that A, your leg cramps, and B, it's very dirty environment. And so after like 2 days, it's gross as heck.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a terrible idea. But I was equally committed to that terrible idea as I was to Netflix.
Okay.
So, you know, always ahead, discerning not so much.
Okay, that sounds painful, but ultimately fruitful in other ways. So you started, before we get to Netflix, you started your first company, Pure Software.
Yep.
What were some of the early lessons you learned from that experience that helped prepare you to start Netflix?
Pure Software was a technical company. We did C and C++ programming tools. And I would say I only had one gear, which is working hard. So I had no sophistication. And so anytime things got hard, I would just try to work harder. And so I was programming all night, trying to be CEO during the day. It looked and smelled like shit. And, you know, but I didn't know any way other than that to cope with the stress. And it was, the products were excellent and the sales doubled every year, but we replaced the head of sales every year for 5 years in a row for an enterprise software company. I mean, it was like a disaster. We could have been so much more. But I honestly just didn't know anything about business or organizations. And so I would concentrate on product and trying to do that. And ultimately, you know, we bought a bunch of companies. Morgan Stanley took us public. Like, you know, in the day of 1995, it was a big success, but it could have been so much more. And so I learned a ton of lessons of like doing things wrong. And again, fortunately, we had amazing enough products that the company continued to grow despite the internal chaos. But the lessons I learned is why we spent so much time in culture on Netflix, wanting to be different, you know, than the first company.
Mm-hmm. We will get to culture. Don't you worry about that. But so I guess let's transition to how Netflix came to be. Not necessarily the full story, but some of the things that happened early on. So Netflix starts in 1997, and from the beginning, you were hyper focused on the customer. How did you know or figure out, you know, what your customer actually wanted, especially as their needs evolved?
Well, in 97, Amazon was off and running, and it was clear that they were likely to dominate buying and selling of things. But rental was a two-way logistics because you had to return in those days, the VHS cassette. And so I was looking at this because Pure Software had been acquired, so I had some money and some time, so looking for a set of ideas. And then...
Tô falando do livro, né? Regra não ter regras. Ele fala de como dão liberdade para os funcionários, como envolvem eles em projetos pessoais e tudo mais, e a hierarquia é muito pequena, né? Quase tem uma hierarquia, mas é sem uma regra fixa, né? Digamos assim, Cara, é um livro muito bom. Vejam ali que vale a pena. Né? A regra não ter regras, do Brad Raisty.
A friend told me about DVD, which was very small, and you could mail it for one stamp. And so that turned into our digital distribution network, because it's 5 gigabytes of data, and you could mail it overnight. And so it was really built around the idea of streaming eventually. You know, we knew the internet was getting faster and faster. But it was going to take some time. And DVD was a temporary device, which is why we named the company Netflix, you know, Internet Movies, rather than DVDbymail.com, you know, which was like the pets.com. It was the thing of that day. So always thinking about eventually getting to streaming.
Sure. And there was a unique moment where you had some challenges in 2011 when you thought about the decision point between DVDs and streaming. So for those who don't know, you made the decision to separate DVD and streaming services. And there was some pushback. At the time, your stock dropped pretty significantly. Customers canceled their subscriptions because prices doubled. So what did you learn from that decision?
So to set some context, we were DVD by mail business. In 2002, we went public. Blockbuster attacked us as they should. They were a little bit late, but we really were executing well. They eventually declared bankruptcy, first Chapter 9 and then wonderfully Chapter 7. And that was in 2009. So we're like full of steam energy. We're getting into streaming. We're opening up new countries. We're like running ahead, and we realize, oh my God, this DVD thing is going to hold us back. We had been thinking about streaming for 15 years, okay, since starting in '97. This was our moment, and we were going to be the one. If you think of all management teams, how many are too cautious at preserving the current business, and how many are too aggressive at pushing into the new business? Well, obviously, everyone's too conservative. So we realized we had to be so aggressive that it should make the hair on the back of our neck stand up, okay? Because human nature is conservative, and most very good management teams were too conservative. So the most radical thing we could think of was to dump the DVD business. And it was 80.
E foi a decisão mais acertada, né? Eles abandonaram o negócio dos DVDs, né? Porque, cara, não era nada escalável. Você tinha que retirava ali, podia assistir no aparelho DVD e tal, né? Mas tinha que devolver e não ficava guardado num data center, né? Eles não tinham domínio sobre o filme, né? Então foi muito acertada a decisão de abandonar os DVDs, né? E eu acho que foi uma boa visão deles, né? Porque eles podiam ter insistido nisso e ter ido de encontro com a Blockbuster, mas eles quiseram bater de frente e aí fizeram um contraponto, né, pela versão digital. Então, que bom, né? Porque a Netflix virou o que virou hoje por causa da visão do cara.
80% of our consumption, because the internet was so slow back then and we didn't have streaming to the television. You know, there's a number of limiters. But we came up with this idea, and we knew it was going to be difficult because, you know, we cared about the customers, we could see that, but we thought it was still the right thing to do. And now there's a good test case where a management team was too aggressive about leaning into the future. And that was us. So we leaned in, and you're right, that most customers did not care about streaming, did not have streaming, couldn't watch it on the television, and so it was just too early.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the idea basically worked, which is Netflix became streaming and DVD shrunk year by year by year. But we overcorrected, and we were overconfident. You know, we had all these battles and various things and naysayers. And so when you've had a lot of naysayers and then you were proven right, then the next round of naysaying comes in and you're like, whatever, we've seen this before. And this time it was too much. And it was traumatic. It felt roughly like you're driving and you get distracted reading a text and you crash and your kid in the back seat's in the hospital. Like the kid being the company. It wasn't dead, but it was severely wounded. Our stock was down 75%. We had our first big layoffs. It was everything that was horrible guilt that should be of, again, trying to learn the lessons that most management teams are too conservative. So therefore, we knew we had to push it to the edge.
Legal. Deixa eu fazer uma pequena pausa aqui. Vou encerrar aqui a transmissão e volto em 3 segundos. Só para poder jogar para o YouTube depois. Bom?